with HoCoClmateAction. As you know, we're sponsoring this informal conversation tonight. So I welcome you all to our session to discuss the process for updating the Howard County Climate Action Plan. The county's asking us to submit comments to the update for the plan by July 30th. And because of the importance and also the kind of sophisticated nature of the plan, we thought we'd ask Josh Feldmark, who's the Howard County Director of Community Sustainability, to talk to us about the process. And we anticipate that he'll provide some background since he manages the existing plan, and that maybe he'd explain the process to us for gathering ideas for the new plan, and answer some questions that we might have. Josh has a lot of experience. He was the first director of environmental sustainability. I believe that Howard County was the first in the country to have such an office. It was a real, I remember it well. It was so long ago. It seems amazing, but that's the truth. So Josh has a lot of experience that he's going to share with us tonight. So I think we already kind of went through some of the logistics of asking you all to go to the chat and put in your name, where you're from, and what organization, if any, that you're representing. And then also, I think a lot of you have already done that, but we're also going to be monitoring the chat for questions. We ask that as we go along, if you have questions, that you put them into the chat, and Sherry Glenn is going to be monitoring the chat and also harvest them for Josh when we get to that point in the talk, in the presentation. Have I left anything out, Ruth Alice, Liz? And if not, let's go ahead and ask Josh if he would begin by sharing just a tad of the great amount of information he has in his head about the Climate Action Plan.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. Yeah, I thought it would be worthwhile to kind of sort of walk it through like a timeline and sort of how we started. This started, it would have been early 2009, and the office was fairly new. It just gotten moving, and we entertained this idea of what was called the Climate Action Plan. There were very, very few of these in the country, and so we kind of didn't know what we meant when we said, let's do a climate action plan. But we did it anyway. And as we sort of went through it, and we were going through it at the same time as Baltimore County and Baltimore City, the city of Annapolis was doing one. And we really, in the end, focused in on a couple of key components for what we meant by climate action plan. The first and really important piece was we did a greenhouse gas inventory. And it was just a full and sort of excruciatingly detailed measurement of all of the greenhouse gases emitted using sort of at the time generally accepted standards for who takes quote unquote credit for a particular emission. So and we sort of had to work that through. So for example, all of the trash that you throw away, the county picks up and then sends down to a landfill in Virginia, owned by a private company called Waste Management. And so the question is, who takes the emissions that the methane that's released, the fuel to get to the truck to pick it up, the fuel for the train to bring it down to Virginia, who counts that? And so we had to work through all of that, and we did sort of our tier 1 and tier 2 emissions, and really did. I really say sort of the main focus of that first one was just to get ourselves an accurate measurement of the greenhouse gas emissions that we were emitting. And then beyond that, we wanted to say, do really sort of split up and say, well, let's take government operations. It's the place where we have the real kind of control. It's obviously the stuff that we know best, and it's sort of like there was the most that we could do. And so we focused as much as we could on government operations and put forth a plan to achieve our goals, which at the time were based on the U.S. Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement, and said, and here's the ways in which we are going to reach those goals through a combination of energy reduction and investment in renewables. We also, in the Climate Action Plan, did have a section on the community as a whole. As I'm sure makes perfect sense to everybody here, when we're talking about our overall climate emissions, what the government emits, even if we take credit for all of it, we take credit, again, I say credit, it implies a good thing. The greenhouse gas emissions, we all pollute from trash. I think we would argue is not a good thing, but to say, even if we take credit for all of that, it's still, government operations is still a tiny fraction of what we as a community emit. So in terms of the energy used, the gas you use, all of that, we obviously don't take credit for. But we wanted to do a good measurement of vehicle miles traveled, energy use for the community as a whole, knowing that our plan was going to do not a whole lot in terms of accountability metrics. We were not going to put in stuff that we were going to measure ourselves against, but to say that, like, let's do a full assessment of what our community is emitting, and let's start to talk about the ways in which we're going to mitigate that problem. I'll tell you what it surfaced is kind of the conundrum, not the, but a very big conundrum of a suburban community, and that is most of our emissions come from vehicle miles traveled. We all travel in cars by ourselves, and there are obviously certain things that we can do to fix that, and a lot of that has started to get implemented. Things like complete streets, trying to ramp up transit, but as I think also most of you know, transit in areas with the density of Howard County becomes very hard to sustain. And so we really surfaced, we're sort of like, these community problems are big. And we're not gonna, through this climate action plan, since it was the first we had ever even started talking about this stuff, we're like, this government operations will give us enough work for the next 5-10 years. And so that was the first one. And then in 2000, and we published that in April 2010, and then went to work. I mean, we just started ticking off the stuff that we were looking at. Again, all pure mitigation work. So all about reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. And then in 2014, well, we sort of started at the end of 13, and then in 2014 we began looking at doing an update, and we went through that, and then there was an election in 2014, and took a little bit of the wind out of the sails on that project. But we did do an update in 2015. And the update was really an update. We didn't do anything differently. It was, let's remeasure all of our greenhouse gases and let's look, how'd we do? We measured, look, we're actually doing really well. And then it said, well, let's like update all the mitigation plans that we had and said, like, here's some more stuff that we might be able to do, or here's how we can double down on the stuff that's really working well. It was right about when the recycling industry was starting to turn. And so there was a little bit of like, hey, this is a problem coming up in the next few years that like recycling's not going to be what we thought what it was in our first plan. So sort of tweaking around the edges. And we've been living under that plan for the last 5 years. And then at the beginning of sort of last year, we started to say, you know, like 5 years is about right. But we think that it is time to not do an update, but to redo our plan. What we meant by that was that a couple of things. One is we can't focus on mitigation exclusively anymore. We don't think we should be focusing on mitigation anymore. Focusing at least just on mitigation, that we need to be talking about adaptation and resilience efforts, and we need to be talking about planning for, using our infrastructure planning around sort of what the effects of climate change are going to be. We also want to think about if we start to shift away and start focusing a little bit more on community-wide, and start saying, like, obviously it would be ridiculous for us to declare victory in government operations. That's insane. But to sort of say, like, we're far surpassing our goals. With this solar array that I'm sure hopefully you all have heard about. I know a lot of you were there with this solar project that we're gonna, our government, like, we were setting a goal at like 20 to 30% for renewables. We're gonna be somewhere between 50 and 70% on Howard County generated solar. Like, we're blowing away these goals, and maybe it's time in this plan to start sort of to kind of give that sort of a nod and move on. But sort of most importantly, what I wanted to do was to say, like, climate action plans are an opportunity for engagement and process, right? Like, climate change, obviously it's, Howard County alone can't solve it, but Howard County government alone definitely can't solve it. And so to use this as an opportunity to engage the community broadly, and to really sort of figure out how we're going to tackle these really difficult and intractable issues. And this is step one in the process. And so I want to be very clear that the feedback that we're soliciting now is not even so much like, it'd be great, whatever. It'd be great if we put wind turbines up. Like, we're not like, the feedback right now is the framework of the climate action plan. We said, like, you guys are literally on step one. Right? Like, we haven't even done step one yet. And so I've come to you and said, like, we're about to take step one. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you want in that. We have not written our request for proposal. We're going to get outside help. We're going to get a contractor. And I'm asking you, what do we put in there, knowing we've got, $100,000-ish? Like, what are the things that we are going to prioritize in this? What are the things that we want front and center, that we want help on in engaging this process? That's what I'm asking for you to say. Like, if you had a list of the 100 things that could go in it, rank them for me. And that's what we're doing. And we have a sort of like a template request for proposal, and are just waiting for the feedback from everybody to see what we put in there, and we go forward. Think it'll be about a year-long process, give or take. But that's how we got to where we are. I've also got a much more robust and deep bench on staff for folks who can help. you know, the first time it was us, it was kind of me and a consultant sort of making it up as we went along, got a little bit better in round two. And this time, as you guys are also very well aware, we've got a lot of very, very talented staff folks who are ready to implement what you guys are asking for. So that's it. That's the background. I think there's probably been questions flying through. I haven't really been watching.
Well, is it time for Sherry to share with us some of those questions that are flying through?
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. I was having technical problems here. Yeah, we've got a few questions that have come in. And yeah, you don't have to kind of watch your chat. Hopefully that's what I'm going to do for you. Sabrina had a couple of questions about how the allocation of the greenhouse gases is done in the climate plan. Specifically, you were talking about how do you put credit in different places. And she says, what about take responsibility in place of take credit? As a suggestion.
Take responsibility is a good, yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And it is sort of like, again, there's sort of tier one and tier two. Tier one is you take primary responsibility. Tier two is, you know, you take, you know, so like with this example, the landfill, waste management is the methane that comes from that. And I think they flare it. So in the end, it's carbon dioxide, but that's their tier one emission and it's Howard County's tier two emission. So we all take responsibility for it. And I like that, that's much better. But it just sort of where it goes in the charts for how we to reduce it.
Okay. And then she followed up with, so greenhouse gas emissions from all the stuff we buy are not allocated for. It's a question, are they, I guess. That is, each item we purchase took fossil fuel to make, so who takes responsibility for that?
Yeah, we do not take responsibility for that. That is, if the corporations are doing it, then you know, you order something from Amazon, Amazon gets that responsibility. And then I believe the distribution companies, if Amazon doesn't own it, so like UPS gets, you know, or FedEx takes responsibility for it, but we as individuals do not. And certainly Howard County, in our tracking of Howard County's community greenhouse gas inventory, except for the vehicle miles traveled inside our, so when we measure vehicle miles traveled, which is our accounting of for the community wide, that is all vehicle miles traveled inside the county. That is not, so if you commute to DC for your job, we take responsibility from your house to the border, and then Montgomery County gets responsibility for you through Montgomery County, and then DC while you're in DC. So we have all the vehicle miles traveled inside the county. Not exactly sure how we measure that, but we do. So
okay,
there's yeah.
All right, and then she asked next, how do we take account of the greenhouse gases from our electricity use, given that we import electricity from other states and most likely out of Howard County?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tier one, tier two issue. But we do take, we have a full accounting of electricity used inside Howard County. Off of, you know, BGE supplies that information, or Pepco, or whoever, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's not just Howard County government, it's everybody. It's
Yep, that's right.
All sources. Okay.
Yep, and we in Howard County government, we measure it by using our, like, we account it with our own energy bills, right? Like we have a full tabulation of all our energy bills. We can measure it. We get demographic wide data from the energy providers.
Okay, then Joel has a follow-up with, I was going to ask, And so all the miles traveled on the interstates on 70 and 95 that go through the county, we account for those as part of
Us,
Howard County's responsibility.
We love to get credit for that. Yeah, I mean, we don't love to get, yes, we get that, that gets put on our tab. Which is why something like a 32 expansion is gonna do actual damage to our inventory. And yes,
the
railroads
railroads
too.
yeah,
Yep,
the
railroads
railroads
too. Yep.
Okay.
Any vehicle traveling, and we get airplanes as well. That's a little bit trickier to count. But and I don't know exactly how they do that, but that'll get, I think most of that goes to Anne Arundel County because I think it's below a certain airspace that they count it. But that's beyond my technical expertise.
Okay. And then we have next one is a very specific question from Joel. So can you get the administration to amend the definition of plug-in electric vehicle so it's not illegal to charge an electric truck, bus, or other low-speed electric vehicles?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, Joel. Joel, you're the only one who thinks it's not legal to do an electric truck. Our Office of Law has confirmed that they believe it is. Everyone else says it's 100% fine to do that under our current.
And that's all we've gotten so far.
Office of Law is wrong again, then. I have answers from the other counties with the same language. They say basically you can't charge a low-speed vehicle in Montgomery County.
Yeah, I guess I'm missing the fine point here between a plug-in individual vehicle versus a truck.
At any rate, this question has nothing to do with
The climate action plan.
climate action plan.
Oh, okay.
If it's illegal to, if you're not encouraging electric trucks in our county as they become more prevalent, because it's technically not legal to charge them. And if you try to enforce it and have the diesel truck ticketed, actually the electric truck is also violating the law, and it's going to discourage at least the one truck stop in Jessup from ever putting them in, and the truck stops that the state has. And whatever else can be developed in the future. It's an impediment that serves no purpose. It's because they copied the definition from for tax credits for electric vehicles, and nobody gave it any thought. And as I said, I got the state committee to finally fix it. So they realize it's a problem. The governor's MIU realizes weight restrictions and impediment. So I don't understand the Office of Law, because it has no purpose and it's an impediment for no good reason, and it's discouraging electric vehicles. So the climate action plan should be to remove any legal impediments that serve no purpose and discouraging new technologies.
Yeah, we're going to get into
Okay.
recommendations for the plan later.
Yeah, I'm going to move on.
I have a question.
Liz-
Since I'm recording, I have trouble. I don't want to open the chat because I'm trying to focus on the main screen.
Okay, go ahead, Ruth Alice, and then I'll follow you.
Yeah, so we're giving ideas for what the plan should cover. And what is the contractor going to do? They're going to take a year to, so this is what's not clear to me, Josh. You want to know what the basic things the plan should do. And the contractor is there going to be a public engagement period with, as other counties have done with many groups getting together in open meetings over a period of time?
Yep. Yeah, no, the plan is to make the entire climate action plan to be a public process.
Mhm.
So we will have these and so like some of that will be the contractor will help facilitate that. Some of that will be the contractor will do the engineering and the sort of number crunching or sort of getting, retrieving the data. But yes, absolutely, this is meant to be a, we're going to do things like this, like we're doing right now, throughout in several steps throughout the process. This is just like before we even get there, this is just a moment to solicit for that.
Okay, so
And-
this is, there'll be an ongoing way to contribute
That's
to,
right.
right,
This is not your last opportunity. This is the first of many.
And I guess we can
Okay.
suggest, part of what you're looking for is how involved, or, suggest how often we should be engaged or at what steps and things like that.
Or if there's or if you're like, like if there's sort of, you want sort of wide open public meetings, you want more sort of strategic, like meeting with organizations, if you want like that's sort of like the nature of the public engagement, and what that would look like, we are totally open to.
Like working groups or things like that. That's what you're trying to
Absolutely.
figure out what
Yeah,
we want.
yeah, what you guys think will work best in terms of getting the best plan. There's always a balance, right? Like, at some point we're writing a report by committee, and we all know how that works. But at the other end of that, this will be a complete failure if my team and a consultant lock ourselves in a room and present forth with a plan. So somewhere in between those two things is the right answer, and sort of what the nature of that is. I'm looking to you guys who are, this is the group more, we will look for broader community participation, but this is really the group of folks that have been engaged on this issue for so long that that is most important to me, to make sure that we are engaging you in the ways you want to be engaged.
Okay, and earlier you had mentioned it would be about a year process, and just for clarification, is that a year for getting the RFP out or a year for completion of the new plan?
No. That's like, I'm hoping like next summer to early fall will be when the plan is completed and public.
Okay. All right. And
It'll be a year of this whole process.
That's right. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the RFP should go out like probably August, maybe early September
Mhm.
of 2021. Yeah.
Okay, and Caroline asks, right now, are you looking for the broad categories that should be in the plan, along with description or explanation of why that's important?
Yes. Yep. That's what I'm looking for. And, if there's any overarching guidance that you want to give us. But yes, the sort of categories that should be involved. If you want us to do a deep dive on a particular issue, that's fine. Say really need to work on renewables, really need to work on waste, really need to work on transit. And the answer is always yes, right? Like, of course, we need to work on everything I just mentioned, but I'm hoping you guys sort of start to like think about if there's one or two that you really think we should be trying to dig into. The council does not need to approve this. I just saw that question fly by.
Okay.
That doesn't mean we don't come up with something that we, sometimes we have taken stuff like the pesticide policy is a good example, where the council did not need to be involved, but we brought it in front of the council almost as a public engagement tool. I haven't decided if that's a good idea for this, or if it'll be necessary because this has got such a public process. But I'm open to what you guys think too. If you think it probably belongs in front of the council, I'm not sure it does, but we're open to that too.
I'll just, rather than type, let's say we want to not have any new construction use fossil fuels. I mean, that, you know, all new buildings need to be electric.
Yeah, I would say that's fine, obviously. But I don't think that's the kind of stuff I'm looking for right now. I think that's the kind of stuff that we will talk about in meeting 2 or 3 or 4. Right now, I'm more looking at, we want to say like, let's take a real aggressive look at residential and commercial energy use, right? Like that's the question. And then we put that on the list as opposed to ascribing specific sort of solutions, which
What
would
the
be a
solution is,
prohibition.
yeah.
Yeah.
What's the question?
Okay, and then Joel goes back to, you had said the council doesn't have to be involved, and says, when does the council not approve plans, complete streets, for example, and does this fit in with the general plan?
Complete streets was a policy, and in the policy, they wrote in council approval. This is not coming out of any policy. The general plan is dictated by code. So there are dozens of plans that we have that are not approved by the council throughout county government. I think you could make an argument either way on this one. Obviously, we'll need council help because there will be policy mandates within this. So
Okay, Kim says that let's look at residential and commercial energy use. And I'm not exactly sure what you
I think
meant
that's a
there,
response
Kim.
because I said take it back, and so I think Kim's being a little cheeky.
Okay. So I didn't quite
It's a
get
great
that.
idea. I think that's exactly the kind of thing I'm looking for. You know, but find the sort of like couple, like you could do that with every issue that has any sort of climate change implication, right? So if you give them all to me, that's not helpful. I'm asking you guys as a group to sort of say like, what are the few that we think we could actually, you know, that is biggest problem that we could actually in a plan like this make some real headway on, that sort of thing. The plan will start to sort of, I'm looking at Elizabeth's question.
Yeah.
Are you coming up with the solutions? So we come up with the solution. Yes. Well, we're all doing it because it's a group-wide effort. But for the moment, we're coming up with the problems, right? And then as a group, we will start to plan the solutions.
Through policies in some cases, or
Absolutely.
suggested policies, or in most cases.
Yeah, I think it'll be a combination of projects and policies. There will be plenty of projects, you know, like again, sort of like building transit hubs, right? Like that's not a policy, that's a project. You know, reducing parking, you know, in new construction to limit car access is a policy. So like, and again, I'm just trying to make up stuff within the topic we're ever talking about. I'm not for or against anything I've just mentioned, but yeah, so the things that we will come up with, the solutions to the problems that we highlight will be either a project for the county government or for the community as a whole through partnerships or policies and laws.
Okay, Karina asks, is stormwater mitigation off the radar for consideration? Thinking about residential, commercial for paving, parking lots, driveways, etc.
It's, yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's not like we don't think about stormwater all the time, well, no, let me scratch that. As we start talking about adaptation and resilience is where stormwater is going to come, no pun intended, crashing into the climate action plan. Because we will start looking at, you know, we are going to have to start looking at where we need to invest in infrastructure to make communities more resilient to the effects of climate change, including increased storm events.
And if I can just add on a little bit, just looking at attending kind of an insurance workshop and considering that there was talk about Maryland becoming a whole flood zone for the entire state, it's kind of, that's where I'm thinking of those proactive measures that are land use mitigation. And looking at paving, especially when the county is moving into redevelopment. I think it would be great that if we're redeveloping areas that are already paved over, that we consider what we're using to redo them if the processes are already taking place. So just land infrastructure and what we're looking at with that, water quality, all those things.
Yes, Kim, that's a great point. Yeah, sorry, I totally agree. Kim, I saw one just sort of fly by on the screen, which I'll get to in a second. Yes, absolutely. That our land use policies and sort of through redevelopment and the kind of work that we're doing around stormwater and energy use through the redevelopment process is huge. And yes, Joel, you're right. It certainly integrates with the general plan. And then Kim asked if we can, the contractor can research the increased work from home and how that has changed energy use in residences and offices. And we have some anecdotal data about what it did for the county government in terms of our overall greenhouse gas inventory when we were on full work from home. And so like we can show the sort of numbers and then absolutely, I think in all of these things in commercial energy use and certainly vehicle miles traveled, teleworking can have a huge impact on that. And in fact, it's mentioned in the original climate action plan, but kind of as a like, oh, wouldn't this be fun? And then all of a sudden, like now, all of a sudden we're forced into it and we're like, hey, actually look at us still being productive without having to drive everywhere.
Okay, Mary did the former plan analyze residential and commercial waste generation, trash, recycling, compost?
It did trash and recycling. The original plan was before we had composting. So, and I don't believe we did have composting by the time the update came around, but I don't think they really delved into it. Delved a word?
Delved into compost? Oof.
That's not the image we were going for.
We're also limited by space right now. I mean, y'all plan to extend pick the green
we're going to expand it to 12 of the 15 zones. So essentially by the time we're done, all of the county residential properties, except for the 3 zones in the Western Howard County, except for Western Howard County, will have access to curbside compost. So be patient, we'll get there. But frankly, what we sort of found is residential food waste, it actually does a pretty good job of reducing our waste stream, what's going to the landfill. But in terms of food waste, it's the commercial properties that are the problem, quote unquote problem. The volume of food waste that you have in supermarkets and restaurants which is again, it's us, right? But like, and there's no, we don't have the capacity to even touch that. Because we're going to hit pretty close to capacity when we hit all 12 zones, which includes every school in the zone, by the way. The schools all do it. All
right, well, Josh, thank you for your time tonight. We've been going for about 45 minutes now. We appreciate you coming by, and I will do this again, I guess, if this is something that you think is going to be helpful through the process. I think
Yeah,
we would very much like to be a part of that. Yeah.
I very much look forward to meeting with you guys as often as you'll have me, mostly.
Great.
Except for you,
Thanks so
Julie.
much.
It's a little joke there. Yeah, well, thank you very much for taking the time, and you all know where to find me. So if you got any, as these come in, or if you have other questions, certainly feel free to email me.
Thank you so much, Josh. Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, Liz or Ruth Allison, which one of you has the PowerPoint?
I do.